Hey guys, Kaido here with a Hecarim guide. This champion right now to me is very strong ever since Season 14 Split 2 has started. With the addition of Legend Ability Haste Rune in the Precision tree, Hecarim has been A or even S tier depending on the drafts. This guide will give you everything you need to pick up Hecarim and start climbing on him ASAP. I have matchups covered, jungle pathing, and more for you guys in this video. I will show the table of contents after his intro. There's a lot to take in, so come back to this guide whenever you need to when you feel lost in your games. I have plenty of gameplay videos on Hecarim on my channel, so you can watch that whenever you want. So yeah, just check it out. Okay, time to get into the video. He has very good traits for a jungler, a very strong all-around champion to carry the game from this role, which is hard to come by. For his cons though, a big thing to try to avoid is the early game invades, which can ruin your game quite fast as you are pretty weak, level 1, unless you have Q stacks so you can fight back. We will cover how to avoid having rough early games later on in the guide, so stay tuned. Let's move on to what your mindset should be when you get into game as a Hecarim. On Hecarim, you want to always find ways to get more gold and EXP on yourself. Whether it's by having jungle camp leads or killing champions, you must find a way to get to the mid to late game stages where you can run at anyone you want. Though people might think Hecarim is weak level 1, you can actually fight back if you have stacks on your Q, like when you're cleaning your camps. And for example, they walk in level 3, so just fight back and pop ghost if you need to. Okay, now for the runes, then we will go into the builds. So first shards, you will go double adaptive with scaling HP shard. The first rune page you can go is Phase Rush. You want to take Nimbus Cloak, Celerity, and Water Walking with it. As for the secondary options, let's cover that after the other set of runes you can take. Your second page is Conquer. You want to take Triumph, Legend Ability Haste, and Last Stand. Secondary, you want to take Inspiration or Sorcery Tree. So before I talk about secondary options, let's cover when you should take Conquer or Phase Rush. It's pretty simple. Take Conquer if they have 3 or 4 melee champions and it's a very team fighting skirmish type game. If they don't have that, you go Phase Rush. Now for the secondary options, for Cosmic you are taking this because you don't want to spend money on boots and are playing for more for the mid game. You also get lower Ghost CD, which is really nice. For Precision, where you can take Triumph with Legend Ability Haste, you can take this when you want a strong early to mid game rune to take fights, and on top of that, it is just very good on Hecarim, having the extra CDR on your basic abilities. Lastly, for Sorcery, where you can take Celerity and Water Walking. I mean, it's pretty simple. You just get more damage overall, and you are a menace in the river. Now, before we get into items, let's talk about boots. Since the CD Boots nerfs that happened on patch like 14.16, I think, if I recall correctly, it might not be worth it to really rush CD Boots. It is a very great tempo item where you can just get back on the map and farm fast and then gank based on your camp clear. Currently, I feel like it might not be worth to buy CD Boots on default every game, like in previous patches. So go CD Boots when you feel like there will be lots of skirmishing, so look at your own teammates, look at the enemy times to decide your boots buy for the game. Tap buy and merc heads are still very strong, so think about buying these a lot more. Now for the builds on Hecarim. First, let's talk about Shojin versus Cleaver. You can go Shojin if you don't need armor reduction versus the enemy team comp, and that is pretty much the biggest difference in both of them. Just nothing else, really. Okay, let's start with the first build, which is the standard Hecarim build. Eclipse and Cleaver will be your core, and then you build tank items that are good for the game. There are other variants of this build, so anyone think about it, like want to build more damage, I got you. So for Starix and Maw, it just depends on the enemy team comp, so versus heavy AP, and you want more damage, you can go Maw. There are options like Visage or Abyssal Mask, which are good on Hecarim, but in my opinion, better later in the game. Starix is a very good tempo item because it gives a big shield and lots of AD, and on top of that, it gives tenacity, which is hard to get by nowadays. Another variant of the standard build, which is Eclipse Cleaver into a more damage approach setup. You can go more bruiser type items like Death Stance or Maw, or you can go a more lethality style with items like Edge of Knight's Opportunity or even Profane. Hubris is also a great item, but it is a like noob stomp type of item though. Your next build is Eclipse Shojin with bruiser type items. With Shojin, I suggest you never go low damage items. I know Visage is in like the fill section, but it's a very great item to slot in around like the 4th to like last item mark, as you will be very high in levels and hard to kill. Visage helps with that. You want to build damage while also having defensive stats while going this build. This build is a very snowball type build. You can go Hubris and Shojin as your core, which is very high for damage. You want to build more damage, and if you want to mix like a nice mix of damage and defensive stats, you go like Edge of Knights. Have fun with this build, it's super addicting when you're popping off in the game. As for Cleaver versus Grudge, the biggest difference is whether you need armor reduction versus the enemy comp. So usually you want to build it when they're pretty tanky. Go Grudge when the enemy comp is like fairly squishy and you can go off on them. Usually the games you can go Grudge are the games you will have Shojin anyways. Now we got a build that doesn't have Eclipse in it. You would only build like this for more a like team fighting approach. Eclipse is a very great skirmish item, which can also be good for team fights. But having haste on Hecarim is very OP. More haste equals more damage if you think about it. So this build should scale very hard the more items you get throughout the game. Go more bruiser type items with this setup. Now this last build, which has Mana Immune. I bet some of you Mana Immune enjoyers were confused where this item setup is. It's very greedy to go, but it does pay off if you get to like the 3 item mark with the Mana Immune fully stacked. You want to go Shojin and Mana Immune together as they are the highest damage items you can buy for your early to mid game transition. They pair very well together for how you want to build. You then want to build items like that make you hard to kill pretty much, as you already have, well, you will have a lot of damage with the Mana Immune. So you want to just build defensive items like Maw and like Stare Axe and stuff. You can also go with Valley if you really want, but do so at your own discretion. So for jungle pets, I mean, is there even a point to like think about and like talk about? Just go blue pet every single game. It synergizes the best with Hecarim, so don't even cope that the other pets can be good. So I mean, I'm just not gonna speak on it that much. Now for matchups, I made this tier list based off my own knowledge. Majority of matchups are very winnable regardless. You just have to get there by avoiding the rough parts in some matchups. So let's just get into very hard matchups first. So Kindred has always been good into Hecarim as she does too much damage. I would know as I myself am a Kindred OTP at one point. If you want to watch any Kindred educational content, go check out my channel as I have a lot of gameplay videos and very good guides for you to follow in your games. I'll have links in the description below. Now back to the matchups. You want to typically avoid Kindred 1v1 unless you have like 3 stacks on her Q. Sometimes you can actually fight her back or buy time for your team to help you. Try to play around like her invades and be ready for any cheeses. Now for Ivern, to be honest, this shouldn't be a hard matchup for most healers, but for high elo specifically, this Ivern champ is more like a team diff champ. So when you have like better laners as the Ivern side, with your extremely disgusting like 3-minute full clear, full HP, and like you're already like basically like next to a laner by 3 minutes, it's very like cringe. So you just can't breathe as the Hecarim side and have like, it will be hard to find timers to get good skirmishes off where you like excel, but be careful of getting like Ivern Q'd, CC'd into like death. That's like the only way it feels rough. Also another thing, Ivern, like when he does his first clear, he has a lot of free time between the 3 to 5 minute mark when his camps are starting to respawn. So keep that in mind. The Ivern will be very active on the map after he clears his first set of camps, and it's gonna be like that every time he clears his camps, right? So try to be able to deal with it. He will try to deport your jungle and try to track you as well as he can. That's what he should be doing. Just make sure you get your camps so he doesn't like yoink them, you know? Moving on to can go either way type matchups. Well, you can see a lot of similarities between Hecarim and these champions, except for like Viego. I'll talk about him after the others. All these champions are good farmers, and they fight after their full clear, and all have specific ways they want to fight. So like to me, that's why they're all very similar. So whoever is winning in the camps department has better tempo with items and taking objectives will usually have like the edge in the matchup. For the Lilia matchup, you counter her very hard in the early stages as you can cancel her ult with yours, so she should never be able to fight you in isolation. But it's just that later on with items like Liandry's and Rala's with Zonya's, she's very hard to deal with in like a 5v5 setting unless you're very ahead. So basically to me this matchup is, if you get ahead, the Lilia cannot play, but if the game is even or you're behind, I think it's just lost versus a good Lilia. Be careful with Udyr in the early game as he is a great clearer and it can just fight you in the jungle early. Now for Viego. Viego has a very good clear and great kit to fight you. His goal in the matchup is to delay your 6 and mess up your full clear game that you excel in. Once he has done that, he will keep messing with you and be able to play for neutral objectives. Be careful versus Viego when he has set up, as he will just get a free reset off you, as you really have no escape other than your R. But if you waste your ultimate, you are useless, right? So that's how you should think about your matchups, is the pros and cons of both sides. Like for Karthus, for example. You probably should always destroy this matchup, but if you ever mess up on camps and he's able to capitalize on it or trade with you one-on-one, like one for one, the game is so good for the Karthus as he scales way too well. So don't give away random shutdowns and fall for one-for-ones with the Karthus, which isn't always worth it. When you die, that means pressure is off for the enemy team if you were the strongest member, and you aren't getting gold and XP while you're dead. That feels pretty bad. Scary matchups now. If you do pretty well into these champions, if you don't get cheesed early game, it's the only way you will find a rough time is if they get a level 1 Raptor invade off or like a level 3 invade, pretty much. You do outscale a lot of these champions if you're able to farm through, like versus Volibear, Nilly, Shaco. Jarvan and Tron do very well into Hecarim because of how strong their early levels are. He can walk into you and just like fight you, and you really can't do anything about it. For some of these matchups, I suggest like you run Conquer, because if you have 3 stacks on Q plus Ghost, you will run down these champions trying to mess with you, except for maybe like Trundle. Trundle just like stat checks you, if you guys never versed him before. Versus a champ like Rengar and Kha'Zix, as I do OTP these champions in the past, you just need 3 stacks on Q, and you cannot lose them 1v1. They don't have enough damage to kill you in time, as their W sustain is insane with Conqueror especially. But if you don't have that, like Kha'Zix will just murk you in the 1v1, and like Rengar's kind of weak, I swear, but I mean, you just need 2 stacks in Q. Simple as that. Now for annoying matchups. They are very free for you in terms of isolation, but in group situations, they are very cringe. So your job in these matchups are to outfarm them and scale very well into the game. Do not fall for the CC they have and die for free, as you will not be able to fulfill your job in the game. For Nunu, please try to put wards in his jungle so you can counter gank him if it's good for you. If you find even 1 or 2 counter ganks, the game should just be over for Nunu and you will run over the enemy team. Easy matchups though. They can't really deal with you in my opinion. Versus champs like Lee Sin and Wukong, I suggest you go Conquer, because if you take Phase Rush, you will lose the 1v1. Good rule usually is if you're 1v1 or 2v2 matters and they will have Conquer, you should take Conquer. Simple as that. Olaf can be a tough matchup for you, but just take Phase Rush and make fun of him and kite him well. And it should just be like a pretty easy matchup. Be careful of his early invades though, as he is very strong in the first like 3 levels with his axe. There's champs like Evelyn and like Talia. I suggest you just outclass them in the full clear, or you can like cheese the Raptor camp, as you are strong level 1 versus them. Now for the cringe matchups, I don't verse them that much in high elo, as like no one plays these champions, but I know the potential they have if you do pilot them like quite well. Both E and Warwick are like psychopathic like type champions, meaning like they just are able to be 1v1 anytime they want and force aggression anytime. So you need to be careful of like randomly getting cheese in your jungle in the early levels. I always talk about how like E players are so stupid because like they don't know how to like that they can legit just start their rep buff and walk into the enemy jungle, and there's like 0 counterplay for the enemy jungler. But yeah, avoid getting cheesed and you should be fine. Also don't fight them 1v1 because they should just beat you majority of the time, especially that they're like good Bork users. And usually Bork users like shit on Hecarim quite hard. And another thing in mind, like if you don't know if you're getting cheese or not, a good sign of mastery will cheese you is if they have like Hail Blades, or they have like Ignite. Like certain like types of rune choices should like signify like they might just cheese you. Jungle pathing. Let's get to 2 full clear paths out of the way. I'll put both on your screen and just watch me do the full clear. He does it very fast, so take advantage of it. Make sure to put 2 points in Q to have a faster clear. Enjoy like watching, I guess. You can speed it up or you can skip this part if you want. Now we have the Raptor start clear. This clear is usually good for doing neutral objectives, like if you're playing for Grubs or playing for Drake. Pretty much having the max gold for those objectives. You just want to do Raptors and do your Krogs, red, wolves, Gromp, blue. Make sure to keep your stacks. You're able to have 3 stacks the whole time pretty much. Sometimes you kind of need to get very good to have the stacks maintained between your Raptor going to the wolf camp. But you should have at least minimum 2 if you're clearing properly. And you should be able to do this clear quite fast, and at the end of it, you just get crab, and you can have a pickaxe base, or you can gank, or you can play the double crab. Do whatever you think is best for the game, of course, and just watch the clear, and you can move on to the last clear. There's one more left in this video, and then we're going to move on to gameplay. Lastly, we have Raptor Blue Gromp clear. It's a very good cheese path you can do. Make sure to maintain your stacks so you do it quite fast. You can go back to your camps after Gromp. I suggest you look for a gank while channeling your base. And if you do base, you can get a longsword or boots, or just get back out on the map to clear again. You can also just stay on the map and just clear if you think the enemy jungler went to your top side. But if he didn't, you can play to base and take your top side and clear all the way down, and you'll have such an insane camp lead on the enemy jungler. Now, let's talk about gameplay. We talked about paths. You just need to clear and get gold and EXP on yourself. As for the early game, make sure you don't get level 1 invaded in games where they have strong champions level 1. Their goal is to set a 900 to 1000 gold base, as it's either a pickaxe with a pink or like CD boots, which are really good bases for Hecarim. For the mid game, you're a competitive eater, as funny as that sounds. Good Hecarim and solo queue will usually be 8 CS per minute, usually, if you're like stomping the enemy team. Kill anyone who is overextended when you are fed. No one can really stop you in the mid game when you are running rampant. Now for the late game, which is basically the team fighting stage, find your flanks where you can catch the carries. You are usually like the secondary engage unless you are very fed, so don't just give your body and end the game away. Make sure to have Q stacks if you really want to maximize your damage in team fights. Okay, tips and tricks. Well, he's not that complicated of a champion in my opinion, but when I see others play Hecarim, to me the biggest difference between good and bad ones that I've seen are the really bad Hecarims that have been like kind of been elo inflated recently in Master Plus, because the champion to me is very strong, like I was talking about earlier in the intro. The way they pilot the champion in terms of spacing and just like their Q uptime is just very horrendous to watch compared to just challenger players piloting Hecarim. Like the OTP Hecarim players, I think most of them are just very bad at like the hands department, I would say. So that is something to keep in mind of when you play Hecarim, is just to have like be mindful of like your spacing and your Q uptime. And the more you play, the better you should get at it if you're, of course, mindful in your practice. So don't be like those Hecarim players who can't space on them when you OTP your champion. You know? Try to play your champion at like the best possible way. Also, your E can allow you to go over walls if you're close enough, and here are some examples of it. And again, remember, if you have 3 stacks of Q, you do more damage, or also the CD is lowered when you have more stacks, so always remember that. Okay, now this is the end of the video, guys. It's gonna be my final thoughts on Hecarim in general. To me, champion is very strong to play, especially when piloted very well. Do not know how he will do in the next season, as this guide, I mean, it's being released like a week and a half before the next split, split 3, so I'm not sure how that will go, but I'll always do updates on every champion that I make guides on, like Kha'zix, Kindred, Hecarim, Graves, Viego, like all these champs I make guides on. I'll keep updating on like what might change in next splits and whatnot. So there's that. Though it is worth learning this champion whenever he is meta. He is just very strong to take over games, especially when you're playing like low mid MMR. Like full clearing is more OP when you're versus noobs because you won't get punished in terms of like invading and like just fighting timers compared to like higher elo games. So like playing full clearing champions that can also 1v9 the game with gold is just very strong. Like his gameplay is simple, like you just full clear all to one side and then you look for a gank on that side and then yeah, you do rinse and repeats. You just play very systematically like that, and it's not a bad thing to have. So yeah, I think if you're gonna watch Hecarim guides or gameplay videos, you can watch on my channel. I do suggest watching players like Huncho, 1v9, there's like Dantos, Tarzan, so they're all good Hecarim players, I would say, who actively play the champion. I think Dantos doesn't play the game anymore, but I'm not sure. Don't keep up with him, but yeah. And if you guys like the content, let me know down in the comments below. I'll be releasing more and more champion guides in the near future. If you guys have any champion suggestions, let me know. I think the next couple guides would be Xin Zhao and like Gwen. Or, like it would be like some bruisers, then some like very hard carries. And I'll see how the next build would be for how the champions. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I do offer coaching services. If you guys want to check it out, join the Discord. There should be links down in the description below. I also have a Patreon service, which you guys can check out, which gives very good value. I have all my coaching sessions on the sites, and yeah, it's just for as low as $3. You can check that out. So if you guys, I mean, that's it. Like, thanks for watching, guys. Hope to see you guys in future videos.